Ma'am, you need to leave now. This dealership isn't for people like you. The security guard's hand moved toward his radio as cameras rolled live. The afternoon sun streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows at Premier Mercedes-Benz, casting long shadows across polished concrete floors. Dr. Keisha Williams stood perfectly still beside a gleaming AMG GT, her clipboard tucked under one arm. She wore faded jeans and a simple gray hoodie, clothes that had somehow triggered a chain reaction she'd been expecting. 20 feet away, a college student held up her phone. "Y'all, this is about to be one of those real-life stories," she whispered to her TikTok audience. "Some Karen situation is going down at this bougie car dealership." Brad Hutchinson, the sales manager, approached with the confidence of someone who'd never been wrong. His silk tie caught the light as he gestured toward the exit. "Excuse me, are you lost? The bus stop is across the street." Keisha's fingers tightened slightly on her pen. She'd heard variations of this script before, but today felt different. Today, she had exactly 13 minutes to gather what she needed. Have you ever been judged so harshly that people couldn't see your true power until it was too late? The timestamp on the dealership's security monitor read 2:47 p.m. In exactly 13 minutes, Brad Hutchinson would discover that some assumptions cost more than others, though right now he felt invincible. Saturday afternoons brought out the dreamers, people who wandered in off the street to touch things they'd never own. He'd developed a sixth sense for spotting them. Keisha moved closer to the AMG GT, her fingers trailing along the carbon fiber trim with surprising familiarity. Most tire kickers were afraid to touch anything. She made a note on her clipboard, and Brad noticed her handwriting was unusually precise, almost clinical. The vehicle's $127,000 price tag caught the afternoon light, but she didn't seem to notice it at all. "These vehicles start at $80,000, Brad announced, projecting his voice just loud enough for other customers to hear. Establishing authority early saved time later. "Do you understand what that means?" The college student filming near the SUV display had attracted 847 viewers, then wowed to 200, then suddenly 2,400. Her whispered commentary carried across the showroom. "Y'all, this is about to be one of those real-life stories where someone gets called out." Keisha looked up from her notes, and Brad caught something unexpected in her expression. Not intimidation or embarrassment, but what looked almost like recognition. "I understand perfectly," she said, her voice carrying a strange undertone of familiarity. "I'm particularly interested in the AMG performance package specifications. The torque curve data, specifically." Brad hesitated. Most customers asked about cup holders and Bluetooth. Torque curves suggested someone who actually understood performance engineering. He recovered quickly, forcing his practiced laugh. "Ma'am, I don't think you realize what kind of establishment this is. We cater to a very specific clientele." When she reached for the driver's door handle, Brad stepped forward, his body language shifting into protection mode. Years of training kicked in. Never let unqualified customers inside expensive vehicles. "I'm sorry, but I can't let you sit in there without proof of serious intent to purchase." The young woman filming whispered urgently, "This is exactly the kind of black stories that go viral. This man is being completely inappropriate." But something bothered Brad about the way Keisha had asked about torque curves. His ex-wife was an engineer. He'd heard that clinical precision before. From across the showroom, Jessica Martinez watched with growing unease, recognizing the signs of one of Brad's mistakes brewing. Keisha's purse sat partially open on the counter, and something inside caught the light. What looked like a first-class boarding pass with tomorrow's date and a destination that made no sense for a casual browser. Stuttgart, Germany, Mercedes-Benz headquarters. Her phone buzzed, the calendar reminder briefly visible. Board meeting, Q4 results, 4:00 p.m. She glanced at her watch with the unconscious precision of someone accustomed to tight schedules. Tom Rodriguez emerged from his office, drawn by the subtle shift in showroom energy that veteran managers learned to sense. His gray suit was immaculate, his expression neutral, but Brad caught the slight tightening around his eyes. the look that meant corporate was watching. "Is there a problem here?" Tom asked, his tone carefully measured. "No problem at all," Brad replied, perhaps too quickly. "Just explaining our standard protocols." Keisha smiled, and Brad felt an unexpected chill. It wasn't the nervous smile of an embarrassed customer or the angry glare of someone about to storm out. It was the patient expression of someone watching a predictable performance unfold. "I have exactly 10 minutes before my next appointment," she said, checking her watch again. "I'd like to test drive this vehicle." The request hit Brad like cognitive dissonance. Her calm confidence didn't match his initial assessment, but backing down now would undermine his authority. "Test drive? Ma'am, our insurance requirements are extremely strict. We need employment verification, credit checks, multiple forms of identification. This isn't Enterprise Rent-A-Car." The live stream had exploded to 4,800 viewers, comments flooding past faster than human eyes could track them. "What exactly are you documenting?" Brad asked, noticing her methodical note-taking had continued throughout their conversation. "Behavioral observations," she replied, and something in her clinical phrasing made Tom Rodriguez step closer. At the top of her clipboard, partially visible, were words that didn't belong in a customer's notes. Quarterly assessment, and what appeared to be employee ID numbers arranged in a grid. Jessica Martinez finally approached, her instincts screaming warnings her conscious mind couldn't quite articulate. "Excuse me, can I help with anything?" she offered, but Brad waved her away with obvious irritation. "Jessica, I've got this handled. Maybe check on the parts department inventory." Jessica hesitated, studying the woman's face. There was something familiar about her, something that nagged at the edge of memory. Keisha's phone buzzed again, and this time the caller ID was impossible to miss. "Mercedes-Benz NA headquarters, executive line." She glanced at it but let it ring through to voicemail, making another precise notation on her clipboard. "Popular lady," Brad said, his sarcasm masking growing uncertainty. "Business must be booming." The college student filming nearly dropped her phone as her viewer count hit 7,200. "Y'all, something big is about to happen. This energy is completely different." Tom checked his watch. 3:52 p.m. 8 minutes until his scheduled call with District Supervisor Patricia Chen, who'd been asking pointed questions about customer satisfaction scores lately. "Brad, perhaps we should," he began, but Brad's confidence had calcified into stubborn pride. "Tom, trust me. 20 years in sales teaches you to spot them from across the room." Keisha closed her purse, concealing the boarding pass and what Jessica had glimpsed as a corporate credit card with an unusual logo configuration. She looked directly at Brad, her expression unchanged but somehow more focused. "I have 7 minutes remaining. Are you going to demonstrate this vehicle's capabilities, or should I document that as a service refusal?" Something about the word document made Tom's stomach tighten, but Brad pressed forward with fatal confidence. "Ma'am, honestly, you might find the Toyota dealership more suitable. They specialize in more accessible price points." The live stream comments exploded in real-time outrage as viewer count surged past 9,000. Jessica Martinez felt the familiar sinking sensation of watching a colleague step off a cliff in slow motion. The showroom's carefully maintained atmosphere began to fracture at exactly the moment Jessica Martinez realized she was watching a masterclass in patience. Brad had dismissed hundreds of customers over the years, but none had ever taken notes like they were conducting a performance review. None had ever checked their watch like they were timing him. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to stop writing things down," Brad declared, his voice carrying newfound authority. "Customer interactions are proprietary to this dealership." Tom Rodriguez felt his blood pressure spike. In 15 years of managing luxury sales, he'd never heard anyone make that claim. Customer interactions weren't proprietary. If anything, they were increasingly public, especially with someone live streaming the entire encounter. The college student's phone nearly slipped from her hands as viewer count exploded past 12,000. Comments flooded in faster than she could read. Did he just say proprietary? This man is completely unhinged. Someone call corporate now. She whispered breathlessly to her audience, "Y'all, this lady might be somebody really important. Look how calm she is." Keisha looked up from her clipboard with renewed interest, like a researcher discovering an unexpected data point. "Proprietary customers' interactions," she repeated slowly, testing each word. "That's a fascinating legal theory. Which statute covers that?" The precision of her question made Brad's stomach flutter. Most customers getting defensive would yell or demand managers. They didn't ask about statutory authority. Something shifted in Jessica Martinez's chest, a recognition she couldn't quite name. The woman's phrasing, her posture, even the quality of her pen suggested institutional knowledge. Jessica had worked corporate retail before opening this dealership. She knew the difference between customers and auditors. "Brad," she said quietly, "maybe we should—" "Jessica, handle the other customers," Brad snapped, cutting her off mid-sentence. "This doesn't concern you." The public dismissal stung, but it also crystallized something that had been bothering Jessica for months. Brad's pattern wasn't just about this customer. It was about control, assumptions, and the kind of behavior that destroyed careers. At 3:55 p.m., Mike Santos received a radio call that would later haunt his dreams. Security to main showroom. Customer refusing to leave, taking unauthorized notes, causing disturbance. Mike had worked retail security for 15 years across luxury dealerships, electronics stores, and department stores. He could spot actual threats from 3 aisles away. This woman wasn't threatening anyone. Tom Rodriguez watched Mike approach and felt his quarterly performance review flashing before his eyes. Corporate had been emphasizing inclusive service all year, especially after the Nordstrom incident that went viral last month. The last thing his location needed was security footage of them ejecting a calm, professional woman who hadn't raised her voice once. "Ma'am, as you can see, we take security very seriously here," Brad announced with obvious satisfaction. "If you're not here for legitimate business, I'll need you to leave immediately." The live stream comments became a waterfall of outrage. Someone had started screenshotting for Twitter, and hashtag Mercedes drama was beginning to trend in several cities. Keisha checked her watch, 3:56 p.m., then looked directly at Mike Santos with the kind of steady gaze that made experienced security professionals reconsider their assumptions. "Officer, I'm conducting business during normal operating hours. What specific policy am I violating?" Mike hesitated. 20 years of experience told him this woman's body language was all wrong for someone who needed removal. "She's trespassing," Brad declared before Mike could respond. "Refusing to leave when requested, disrupting operations, harassing staff." Jessica Martinez felt something snap inside her chest. "Actually, Brad, she hasn't—" she began, but Brad wheeled around with unusual venom. "Jessica, if you can't follow simple instructions, maybe you should reconsider your career path." The public humiliation hit Jessica like a slap, but it also illuminated something crucial. She'd been watching Brad operate for 3 years, seeing his pattern with customers who didn't fit his preconceptions. Today felt different because today someone was documenting it with professional thoroughness. The college student filming had moved close enough to capture facial expressions. Her live stream had become must-see content for thousands of viewers who'd started sharing it across platforms. "This is about to be one of those life stories that changes everything," she whispered to her phone. This man has no idea what storm is coming. At 3:57 p.m., Keisha's phone lit up with a text message that nearby cameras captured. "Dr. Williams, board meeting moved to 4:15. Stuttgart needs quarterly assessment results first." She glanced at it with the casual attention of someone accustomed to high-level schedule changes, then looked back at Mike Santos. "Officer, I'll be concluding my business in exactly 2 minutes. Will that resolve your concerns?" Mike Santos blinked. Most people being asked to leave either argued indefinitely or stormed out immediately. They didn't negotiate precise departure schedules like corporate executives managing tight timelines. 2 minutes should be fine, he said carefully, ignoring Brad's frustrated expression. Brad's victory suddenly felt hollow. Something about her compliance pattern didn't match his 20 years of customer experience. Embarrassed people left angry. Intimidated people left quickly. This woman was managing the situation like she was running a meeting, and somehow that made him feel like he was failing a test he didn't know he was taking. Tom Rodriguez watched other customers' reactions with growing alarm. The well-dressed elderly couple near the C-Class display looked genuinely distressed. A businessman examining the E-Class kept glancing over with obvious concern. The luxury atmosphere he'd spent years cultivating was dissolving in real time, replaced by the uncomfortable energy of public humiliation. Jessica Martinez made a decision that would define her career trajectory. "Brad, I really think you need to reconsider." She started again, but Brad's patience had evaporated completely. "Jessica, take a 15-minute break. Go to the back office and think about whether luxury sales is really your calling." The dismissal was calculated to establish dominance, but it backfired by making Jessica a witness with nothing left to lose. At 3:58 p.m., something extraordinary happened. Keisha closed her clipboard and placed it carefully in her purse, but instead of the defeated posture Brad expected, her movements carried the precise efficiency of someone completing a scheduled task. The live stream audience, now approaching 18,000 viewers, sensed the shift immediately. "1 minute remaining," she announced, checking her watch with the calm precision of someone who'd been timing this entire encounter. Mike Santos found himself genuinely curious about what would happen at the 1-minute mark. Most people didn't manage confrontations with countdown timers. The college student whispered urgently to her phone. "Y'all, something is definitely about to happen." She's not upset, she's not embarrassed. She looks like she's been waiting for this exact moment her entire career. Comments flooded in agreement. "Plot twist incoming." "She knows something he doesn't." This man just stepped in quicksand. Brad watched her gather her belongings and felt an unexpected hollowness in his chest. Her reaction didn't match any customer archetype from his training. She wasn't angry, wasn't embarrassed, wasn't making threats or promises of bad reviews. She was behaving like someone whose real job was about to begin. At 3:59 p.m., with 60 seconds remaining in what she'd clearly established as her observation period, Keisha Williams pulled out her phone and smiled. It wasn't the defeated smile of someone being ejected, or the angry smile of someone planning petty revenge. It was the patient, almost relieved smile of someone whose professional responsibilities were finally aligned with personal satisfaction. The phone in her hand began to ring, and the caller ID was visible to everyone nearby. "Mercedes-Benz NA headquarters, executive line." This time she answered. "Dr. Williams speaking." The two words detonated in the showroom's tension like a controlled explosion, each syllable reshaping reality for everyone within earshot. Brad Hutchinson's confident smirk didn't just fade, it disintegrated, replaced by the wide-eyed expression of a man watching his career implode in slow motion. Jessica Martinez felt her breath catch in her throat as 20 different observations suddenly clicked into perfect, terrifying focus. "Yes, I'm conducting the quarterly Undercover assessment right now," Keisha continued, her voice carrying the effortless authority of boardroom conversations and shareholder meetings. "The behavioral patterns are remarkably consistent with previous regional reports. I'll have comprehensive documentation ready for the 4:15 Stuttgart conference call." She paused, listening to the voice on the other end while her eyes remained fixed on Brad's increasingly pale face. "No, additional observation time won't be necessary. The data set is quite complete." The college student's live stream exploded past 30,000 viewers as comments flooded in faster than servers could process them. "Holy shit, she's the actual CEO! This man is about to be unemployed! I cannot believe this is happening live!" Her whispered narration trembled with excitement. "Y'all, this is the plot twist of the decade. This woman literally runs Mercedes-Benz and he just called security on her." Tom Rodriguez felt his knees go weak as corporate training from 8 months ago crashed back into his consciousness like a freight train. The memo about undercover customer experience assessments, anonymous executive shopping, zero tolerance policies, career-ending consequences for discrimination. He'd filed it away, assuming corporate visits would arrive with advance notice, executive assistants, and obvious credentials, not in hoodies and jeans on Saturday afternoons. "Let me call you back in 60 seconds, Keisha said into her phone, her tone carrying the casual command of someone accustomed to managing billion-dollar operations. "I believe we're about to have a very educational conversation." The way she said educational made Brad's stomach drop toward his shoes. This wasn't just a customer complaint anymore. This was a case study in corporate accountability, and he was about to become the cautionary tale. She ended the call and slipped the phone back into her purse with deliberate precision, allowing silence to expand until it became suffocating. The showroom had transformed into a theater, with every customer, every employee, every person watching the live stream waiting for the next revelation. Even the building's ambient sounds, air conditioning, distant traffic, electronic beeping, seemed muted by the weight of what had just been revealed. Mike Santos had worked security across luxury retail for 15 years, but he'd never experienced anything like the moment when he realized he'd been asked to escort out the person who could eliminate every job in the building with a single phone call. His hand moved unconsciously away from his radio, muscle memory telling him to distance himself from the weapon that had almost become the instrument of his own professional destruction. "I should introduce myself properly," Keisha said, reaching into her purse with the unhurried movements of someone who had suddenly become the most powerful person in a 50-mile radius. "Dr. Keisha Williams, Chief Executive Officer, Mercedes-Benz, North America." She produced a business card holder of unmistakable executive quality, leather that probably cost more than Brad's monthly car payment, with the subtle weight of real authority. Brad's hand trembled as he accepted the card, his eyes struggling to focus on the corporate logo, the Stuttgart headquarters address, the direct contact information that confirmed his nightmare was real. 3 months ago, a corporate memo had announced the new CEO, a black woman, PhD in mechanical engineering from MIT, former Tesla vice president of operations, committed to transforming customer experience across all retail channels. He'd skimmed it during a coffee break, filed it mentally under corporate news that doesn't affect me, never imagining those credentials belonged to the woman he'd just spent 20 minutes publicly humiliating. "The interesting thing about undercover assessments," Keisha continued, her voice carrying the measured cadence of someone accustomed to delivering difficult news to powerful people, "is that they reveal authentic behavior patterns. When people don't know they're being evaluated, their true professional character emerges." She pulled out her clipboard, and Brad caught a glimpse of detailed notes that made his chest tighten with dread. The assessment form was comprehensive and damning. Timestamps documenting each escalation, direct quotes of discriminatory language transcribed in precise handwriting, behavioral observations written with clinical objectivity, witness statements from other customers. A methodical record of everything that had transpired, documented with the thoroughness of someone whose job was identifying exactly these systemic failures. Jessica Martinez stepped forward, her 3 years of watching Brad's patterns suddenly crystallized into moral clarity and professional opportunity. "Dr. Williams, I attempted to intervene multiple times during this interaction. Mr. Hutchinson dismissed my concerns and ordered me to the back office when I tried to correct his approach." Her voice carried the steady conviction of someone who had found courage at exactly the right moment. Keisha's attention shifted to Jessica with genuine interest, and something in her expression suggested this wasn't accidental recognition. "Ms. Martinez, correct? Employee ID 4847, 3 years with this location, consistently exceptional customer satisfaction ratings, multiple commendations for inclusive service practices." Jessica's eyes widened in amazement. The CEO knew her personnel file, had been reviewing employee performance data, was familiar with individual contributions across hundreds of dealerships. "Yes, ma'am, that's correct," Jessica managed, her voice barely concealing her astonishment. "And during today's incident, you attempted to de-escalate multiple times despite being publicly reprimanded by your direct supervisor?" Keisha's questions carried the precision of someone building a legal case in real time. "Yes, ma'am. I could see the situation deteriorating, but my input was dismissed." Brad found his voice, though it emerged as a strangled whisper barely recognizable as human speech. "Dr. Williams, please, this is all a catastrophic misunderstanding. If I had known who you were, if I had any idea—" "Mr. Hutchinson," she interrupted, her tone remaining calm but somehow becoming more final, like a judge delivering a verdict. "You've just articulated precisely why these assessments are essential. Your behavior toward me didn't change because you suddenly developed respect for my humanity. It changed because you realized there would be professional consequences for your choices. That suggests your discrimination isn't accidental, it's systematic and deliberate." The weight of his situation crashed over Brad like a tsunami of recognition. Every dismissive word was documented. Every contemptuous gesture was recorded. Every assumption was captured on live stream for 40,000 viewers and climbing. His 20-year sales career hadn't just ended. It had become a viral monument to the cost of prejudice, preserved forever in digital amber. Tom Rodriguez felt his quarterly review transforming into a career obituary as he watched his best salesperson's public destruction unfold in real time. Corporate had been explicit about zero tolerance for discrimination, especially after the Nordstrom and Barney's scandals had become cautionary tales throughout luxury retail. Having the CEO herself document systematic bias at his location meant not just disciplinary action, but the complete annihilation of his management trajectory. "However," Keisha continued, and the single word made everyone in the showroom lean forward imperceptibly, "this situation also represents an unprecedented opportunity for systematic transformation. Real change doesn't emerge from punishment alone. It requires education, accountability, and structural reform." She paused, allowing hope to creep back into the room like sunlight through storm clouds. "But first, we need to have a comprehensive discussion about implementation and consequences." She placed her phone on the nearby counter where everyone could see the screen, then began dialing with the methodical precision of someone accustomed to managing corporate crises. "I'm initiating an emergency consultation with senior leadership," she announced. "Mr. Rodriguez, your participation is mandatory. Ms. Martinez, your perspective will be invaluable. Mr. Hutchinson," she studied his ashen face with the clinical interest of a researcher examining a specimen, "your cooperation will determine whether this becomes a case study in redemption or a textbook example of career suicide." The phone rang twice before a crisp, professional voice answered through the speaker. "Patricia Chen, District Operations Supervisor." "Patricia, this is Keisha Williams. I'm at the Riverside location conducting quarterly assessment protocols. We have a significant situation requiring immediate senior leadership consultation with full legal and HR support." Patricia's voice sharpened to corporate crisis alertness. "Dr. Williams, what's the nature and scope of the situation?" "Documented systematic customer discrimination with multiple witnesses and comprehensive video evidence. I have the involved parties present for immediate consultation and need legal, HR, and regional operations on this call for real-time guidance on remediation protocols." The conference call expanded to include voices that made Tom Rodriguez's vision blur with panic. Senior Vice President of Human Resources, Chief Legal Counsel, Regional Operations Director. The quiet Mercedes-Benz showroom had suddenly become ground zero for a corporate crisis management session, with careers hanging in the balance of decisions being made in real time. "Mr. Hutchinson," came the measured voice of the chief legal counsel through the phone's speaker. "You should understand that this conversation is being recorded for comprehensive HR documentation. You have the right to request employee representation, but given the circumstances and potential legal implications, immediate full cooperation would be strongly advisable." Brad looked around the transformed showroom, at the cameras still rolling, at his colleagues' shocked faces, at the CEO who had just revealed the catastrophic scope of his misjudgment. and realized that cooperation wasn't just advisable. It was his only hope for salvaging anything from the complete wreckage of his assumptions about power, privilege, and consequences. The live stream had transcended viral content to become a masterclass in corporate accountability unfolding in real time. Over 50,000 viewers were witnessing systematic change in action, watching as individual prejudice collided with institutional power and lost decisively. "Now then, Dr." Keisha Williams said, her voice carrying the quiet authority that had transformed automotive industry standards across 2 decades of leadership. "Let's discuss what comprehensive, systematic reform actually looks like when implemented correctly." The conference room that had hosted countless mundane sales meetings was about to become the stage for a corporate reckoning that would reshape policy across 3 continents. Tom Rodriguez's hands trembled as he activated the video system, knowing that his next words would either salvage his 23-year career or document its spectacular implosion for posterity. The screen flickered to life, revealing a grid of executives whose combined authority could restructure entire market segments with boardroom conversations. But what struck Tom immediately was the tension in their expressions. This wasn't routine corporate consultation. This was crisis management at the highest levels, triggered by a live stream that was still gaining viewers by the thousands. "Ladies and gentlemen," Dr. Keisha Williams began, settling into the head chair with the controlled grace of someone accustomed to managing billion-dollar disasters. "We're convening emergency consultation to address systematic discrimination documented in real time at our Riverside location. Full legal, HR, and remedial protocols are required immediately." Senior Vice President Margaret Torres leaned forward on screen, her expression carrying the gravity of someone who'd spent 30 years cleaning up corporate catastrophes. "Dr. Williams, before we proceed, I need to understand the viral component. My communications team is reporting 67,000 viewers on the primary live stream, with shares multiplying across all platforms. We're looking at potential brand impact on a national scale." Brad Hutchinson felt his chest tighten as the scope of his public humiliation expanded beyond his worst nightmares. 67,000 people had watched him call security on the CEO. The number would only grow, preserved forever in digital amber as a cautionary tale about assumptions and consequences. Keisha opened her assessment clipboard, but instead of the clinical recitation Tom expected, she paused and looked directly at Brad. "Mr. Hutchinson, before I present these findings to corporate leadership, I want to give you one opportunity to provide your perspective on what transpired today. Not excuses, perspective." The unexpected chance for self-advocacy caught Brad off guard. His mouth opened, closed, then opened again as 20 years of sales experience collided with the most important words he'd ever spoken. "Dr. Williams, I built my career on reading people quickly, making judgments about who could afford luxury vehicles and who was wasting time. Today I was completely wrong about everything that mattered, and my assumptions revealed prejudices I didn't even realize I carried." District Supervisor Patricia Chen's voice carried through the speakers with unexpected gentleness. "Mr. Hutchinson, that level of self-reflection is encouraging, but help me understand. Was this an isolated error in judgment or part of a broader pattern?" Brad glanced at Jessica Martinez, whose presence suddenly felt like a witness to his professional soul. "Ma'am, if I'm being completely honest, this wasn't isolated. I've made assumptions about customers based on appearance multiple times. I convinced myself it was efficiency, but today showed me it was discrimination disguised as experience." The conference room fell silent as Brad's admission hung in the air. Tom Rodriguez felt his own culpability crystallizing. He'd known about Brad's pattern, but had excused it because Brad consistently hit sales targets. Numbers had mattered more than principles, and that failure was about to cost both of them everything. Chief Legal Counsel David Park's voice cut through the silence with laser precision. "Mr. Hutchinson, your honesty is noted, but you've just admitted to systematic discriminatory practices over multiple years. From a liability standpoint, that creates significant exposure for the company. However, Dr. Williams interjected, and something in her tone made everyone lean forward. It also creates an opportunity for the kind of genuine transformation that policy manuals can't achieve. She turned to Jessica Martinez with renewed attention. Ms. Martinez, I've reviewed your personnel file extensively. 3 years at this location, consistently exceptional customer satisfaction scores, multiple commendations for inclusive service. But there's something else. You've submitted 6 separate incident reports about discriminatory customer treatment that were never acted upon. Jessica's eyes widened in surprise. You read my incident reports? I was told they were filed for documentation purposes only. Ms. Martinez, every report you submitted reached my office within 48 hours. They've been part of the data informing our Undercover assessment program. Dr. Williams paused, allowing the implications to settle. Your courage in documenting problems and attempting intervention today didn't happen in isolation. It represents 3 years of professional integrity under difficult circumstances. I'm hot. Tom Rodriguez felt the ground shifting beneath his career as he realized his failure to act on Jessica's reports had been documented at the highest corporate levels. Dr. Williams, I should have taken those reports more seriously. I thought I was managing the situation internally. Mr. Rodriguez, came the voice of Regional Operations Director James Mitchell. Managing situations internally is exactly the problem. Discrimination thrives in environments where middle management decides what constitutes acceptable behavior rather than following corporate policy. Margaret Torres's voice carried institutional authority that made Brad's knees weak. Given the documented pattern of behavior, the viral nature of today's incident, and the admission of systematic discrimination, we need immediate corrective action that demonstrates corporate accountability. But Dr. Williams raised her hand before Torres could continue. Margaret, I have a different proposal. One that turns this crisis into an opportunity for industry leadership. Her voice carried the confidence that had earned her recognition as one of the most innovative executives in automotive history. I'm listening, Torres replied carefully. Rather than standard disciplinary action, we implement the Riverside Transformation Protocol. Mr. Hutchinson undergoes comprehensive cultural competency training, works directly with diversity consultants, and becomes a case study in redemption rather than punishment. Ms. Martinez receives immediate promotion to sales manager with regional training support. Mr. Rodriguez implements enhanced protocols that become the template for nationwide rollout. The silence that followed was deafening. Brad felt hope and terror warring in his chest. Redemption sounded better than termination, but being a corporate case study meant his mistakes would be studied and analyzed for years to come. David Park's legal mind was already working through implications. Dr. Williams, that's unconventional, but it does demonstrate proactive response rather than reactive damage control. From a liability standpoint, it shows corporate commitment to transformation over punishment. More importantly, Dr. Williams continued, it gives us a real-time laboratory for developing protocols that can prevent discrimination rather than just punishing it after the fact. Mr. Hutchinson's honest admission of systematic bias makes him uniquely qualified to help identify the mindset patterns we need to change across the entire organization. Jessica Martinez felt tears threatening as she realized her years of documenting problems were being transformed into career advancement beyond her wildest dreams. Dr. Williams, I don't know what to say. This opportunity, it's everything I've worked toward. Ms. Martinez, this isn't charity. It's recognition of demonstrated excellence under pressure. Your promotion acknowledges existing capabilities rather than creating potential. But then Dr. Williams' expression became more serious, and her voice carried new weight. However, this transformation protocol comes with unprecedented accountability measures. Mr. Hutchinson, your redemption path includes monthly psychological evaluations, quarterly performance reviews, and permanent documentation of this incident in your personnel file. One misstep, and the termination we're avoiding today becomes immediate and permanent. Brad nodded rapidly, understanding that he was being offered a lifeline with conditions that would define the rest of his career. Dr. Williams, I accept those terms completely. I'll do whatever it takes to prove that people can change when they're held accountable for their choices. Patricia Chen's voice carried administrative finality. These protocols will be piloted at Riverside with full corporate oversight. Success here determines rollout across 47 locations. Mr. Rodriguez, your management career depends on making this transformation protocol work. Tom felt the weight of responsibility and opportunity settling on his shoulders. 23 years of experience had led to this moment where failure meant career destruction, but success could mean industry leadership. Dr. Williams, he said, his voice stronger now, we'll make this work. Not just for our careers, but because it's the right thing to do. The live stream had grown to over 80,000 viewers, but instead of witnessing corporate punishment, they were seeing systematic transformation in real time. The comments had shifted from demands for justice to amazement at witnessing genuine change being implemented with unprecedented transparency. Then it settled, Dr. Williams said, her voice carrying the quiet satisfaction of someone who had just turned a crisis into a catalyst for industry-wide reform. The Riverside Transformation Protocol begins Monday morning, with full documentation for future implementation across our entire retail network. 6 months later, the Riverside Mercedes-Benz dealership had become something unprecedented in luxury automotive retail, a laboratory for transformation that corporate executives from 3 continents visited to study systematic change in action. The showroom looked identical to that Saturday afternoon when everything changed, but the energy was completely different. Where tension once crackled between assumptions and reality, there was now the calm professionalism of people who understood that excellence meant treating every customer like they mattered. Jessica Martinez stood in the same spot where she'd watched Brad Hutchinson's career implode, but now she wore the confident bearing of someone whose courage had been rewarded with opportunity beyond her wildest expectations. The interim sales manager title had become permanent after her first quarter produced the highest customer satisfaction scores in regional history. Her team meetings began each Monday with a simple question: how do we make every person who walks through that door feel valued? The transformation hadn't been easy. Brad Hutchinson's redemption journey had required confronting 20 years of ingrained assumptions through intensive cultural competency training that stripped away comfortable prejudices layer by layer. Dr. Patricia Williams, the clinical psychologist brought in to facilitate his rehabilitation, had been brutally honest about the work required to change patterns of thinking that had seemed natural for decades. Brad, discrimination isn't usually conscious malice, Dr. Williams had explained during one of their weekly sessions. It's unconscious bias reinforced by social patterns and professional environments that reward quick judgments. The hard part isn't admitting you were wrong. It's developing new instincts that contradict everything you thought you knew about reading people. The breakthrough came during month 3, when Brad was assigned to work directly with Jessica on customer service protocols. His first day back on the showroom floor, a young black woman in athletic wear approached the same AMG GT where everything had started. Brad felt his old instincts activate. Assumptions about purchasing power, quick categorizations about serious intent, but this time he recognized the mental process as it happened. Instead of dismissing her inquiry, he spent 45 minutes explaining performance specifications, arranging a test drive, and discovering she was a cardiovascular surgeon looking for a weekend car to celebrate completing her residency. She bought the vehicle that afternoon, paying cash, and specifically mentioned Brad's professionalism in her customer feedback survey. That sale taught me more about my own prejudices than all the training sessions combined, Brad later told the corporate documentary team that was filming the Riverside Transformation Protocol for nationwide implementation. I realized I'd been programming myself to fail by limiting my own opportunities to succeed. Tom Rodriguez had embraced his probationary status as a chance to rebuild management practices from the ground up. The quarterly performance reviews that once terrified him had become opportunities to demonstrate systematic improvement. Customer satisfaction scores had improved by 37%. Employee retention was at an all-time high. Most importantly, the culture of the dealership had shifted from competitive individualism to collaborative excellence. The mystery shopper program had initially created anxiety among the sales staff, but after 6 months of consistently positive evaluations, it had become a source of professional pride. Everyone knew they were being watched, but instead of creating paranoia, it reinforced the understanding that professional excellence was expected all the time, not just when managers were present. Dr. Keisha Williams visited the dealership monthly, not as CEO conducting surveillance, but as executive sponsor of a program that was exceeding every projection. The Riverside location had become the template for cultural transformation across the entire Mercedes-Benz North American retail network. Discrimination complaints had dropped to 0. Customer loyalty scores had reached record levels. Most remarkably, sales performance had improved as inclusive service practices attracted more diverse clientele. The business case for inclusive excellence isn't complicated, Dr. Williams explained to the Harvard Business Review reporter documenting the transformation. When you stop making assumptions about who can afford luxury products, you discover that purchasing power exists across every demographic category. Prejudice doesn't just harm customers, it limits business growth. The technology implementation had been crucial to sustainability. Customer feedback systems now provided real-time data directly to corporate oversight, bypassing local management filters that had previously buried complaints. Every interaction was tracked, measured, and analyzed for patterns that might indicate discriminatory treatment. The system had been so successful that Mercedes-Benz was licensing it to other luxury retailers facing similar cultural challenges. Mike Santos, the security guard who had almost escorted out the CEO, had become an unexpected champion of the new protocols. His experience that Saturday had taught him the importance of questioning assumptions even when following direct orders. He'd volunteered for additional training in de-escalation techniques and cultural competency, becoming the dealership's informal ambassador for professional security practices. "I learned that my job isn't just protecting the dealership from bad customers," Mike explained to new security staff during orientation. "It's protecting good customers from bad assumptions. Sometimes the person who looks out of place is exactly the person who belongs here most." The college student whose live stream had captured the original incident had become an unlikely corporate partner. Mercedes-Benz had hired her as a social media consultant, recognizing that authentic documentation of customer experiences was more valuable than traditional marketing. Her follow-up videos documenting the transformation had generated over 2 million views, creating a case study in corporate accountability that business schools were using in ethics curricula. "The most incredible thing about this whole story," she had posted in her 6-month follow-up video, "is watching people choose to grow instead of making excuses." Brad could have gotten angry and bitter about being called out. Tom could have blamed corporate policies. Instead, they decided to become better versions of themselves. That's what real change looks like. The financial impact had exceeded every projection. The Riverside location's revenue had increased by 28% as word spread about exceptional customer service regardless of appearance or background. Referral rates had doubled. Customer retention had reached industry-leading levels. More importantly, employee satisfaction surveys showed that people enjoyed working in an environment where excellence was defined by treating others with dignity rather than making profitable assumptions. Jessica Martinez often worked late, not because she had to, but because she loved the work of building something better than what existed before. Her office walls displayed customer thank you letters, employee recognition certificates, and the framed cover of Automotive News featuring the Riverside transformation as the industry's most successful cultural change initiative. One evening, as she locked up the showroom, Jessica paused at the AMG GT where everything had started. The car was the same, the building was the same, even the lighting was the same. But everything that mattered had changed completely. A customer's dignity was now as important as their down payment. Professional assumptions had been replaced by professional curiosity. Most importantly, the understanding that everyone deserved respect had become the foundation of business excellence rather than an obstacle to profitability. The viral video that had started as documentation of discrimination had become evidence that systematic change was possible when people chose growth over defensiveness. Brad's redemption, Jessica's promotion, Tom's transformation, and the dealership's cultural evolution had proved that institutional bias could be identified, addressed, and replaced with practices that benefited everyone involved. The Riverside Transformation Protocol was now being implemented across 47 Mercedes-Benz locations, with plans for nationwide rollout by year's end. Other luxury retailers were studying the model, recognizing that inclusive excellence wasn't just morally correct. It was financially superior to discriminatory practices that limited customer bases and damaged brand reputation. 6 months after the worst day of his career, Brad Hutchinson had become one of the dealership's most requested salespeople, specifically because customers knew his transformation story and trusted that he understood the importance of treating everyone with respect. His journey from prejudice to professional excellence had become proof that people could change when held accountable for their choices and supported in their growth. 1 year after a casual Saturday afternoon changed everything, Dr. Keisha Williams stood before the National Automotive Dealers Association convention, addressing 3,000 industry leaders about the transformation that had begun with a single live stream and evolved into a blueprint for systematic change across luxury retail. The auditorium was packed beyond capacity, with executives from BMW, Lexus, Audi, and Porsche taking notes on protocols that had turned crisis into competitive advantage. The most remarkable thing about the Riverside incident, she told the audience, wasn't that discrimination occurred. Unfortunately, that happens daily across our industry. The remarkable thing was that it was documented, addressed immediately, and transformed into systematic reform that benefited everyone involved. That's the difference between crisis management and cultural leadership. Behind her, the presentation screen showed metrics that had silenced every skeptic. Customer satisfaction scores up 42%. Revenue increased 34%. Employee retention at record highs. Discrimination complaints down 97% across all participating locations. Most importantly, the business case for inclusive excellence had been proven beyond any reasonable doubt. In the audience, Jessica Martinez sat in the front row wearing the navy blue blazer of a regional sales director, her promotion from that single dealership having opened doors across the entire automotive industry. Next to her, Tom Rodriguez took notes as the newly appointed Director of Cultural Excellence Training. His management experience now valued specifically because of his transformation journey, rather than despite his initial failures. Even Brad Hutchinson was there, representing the sales team that had become the company's most requested for customer service excellence. His redemption story had become legendary in automotive circles, not as cautionary tale, but as proof that people could fundamentally change when held accountable and supported in their growth. His book, Assumptions and Apologies, A Salesperson's Journey from Prejudice to Excellence, had become required reading in business ethics courses nationwide. The college student whose live stream had started everything was now Mercedes-Benz's Director of Social Media Authenticity, her ability to capture genuine human moments having revolutionized how luxury brands approached customer interaction documentation. Her follow-up videos tracking the transformation had generated over 8 million views, creating a masterclass in corporate accountability that other companies studied religiously. What we learned, Dr. Williams continued, is that touching stories don't just inspire. They create blueprints for systematic change. When we documented discrimination, addressed it transparently, and implemented reform with measurable accountability, we didn't just solve one problem. We created a model that prevents thousands of similar problems across our entire industry. The protocols developed at Riverside had spread far beyond automotive retail. Nordstrom, Saks Fifth Avenue, and Tiffany & Company had all licensed variations of the customer feedback systems and cultural competency training programs. Harvard Business School had created a case study curriculum around the transformation, with MBA students analyzing the financial and ethical implications of choosing inclusive excellence over discriminatory efficiency. But the most profound changes weren't measured in corporate metrics or academic recognition. They existed in the daily interactions between human beings, in the understanding that everyone who walked through those showroom doors deserved to be treated with dignity, regardless of appearance, age, accent, or assumptions about purchasing power. Dr. Williams had proven that real-life stories could become catalysts for institutional transformation when leadership chose courage over comfort, growth over defensiveness, and systematic change over individual punishment. The Riverside incident had evolved from viral humiliation into industry leadership, demonstrating that Black stories weren't just about overcoming discrimination. They were about creating environments where discrimination couldn't survive. The question isn't whether your organization will face similar challenges, she concluded, looking directly into the cameras that were broadcasting her presentation to automotive dealers across 47 states. The question is whether you'll be prepared to transform those challenges into opportunities for the kind of excellence that benefits everyone involved. The standing ovation that followed wasn't just professional courtesy. It was recognition that systematic change was possible when people chose to grow rather than make excuses, when institutions chose transparency over cover-ups, and when individual courage became the foundation for collective transformation. As the applause continued, Dr. Williams smiled with the quiet satisfaction of someone who had turned a moment of prejudice into a movement for progress. The live stream that had started with discrimination had ended with demonstration, proof that touching stories could reshape entire industries when the right people decided that change wasn't just necessary, but inevitable. Your turn to make change happen. Have you witnessed discrimination in retail, workplace, or social settings? Share this story if you believe everyone deserves dignity, regardless of appearance. Comment below with your own experiences of being underestimated or witnessing others challenge unfair assumptions. Subscribe for more life stories that prove courage and accountability can transform seemingly impossible situations into opportunities for systematic improvement. Remember, the next time you see someone being judged unfairly, you have the power to intervene, document, and demand better. Your voice might be the catalyst that transforms discrimination into dignity, assumptions into understanding, and individual courage into collective change. Change starts with witnesses who refuse to stay silent.